through the day, which will be quite gusty around some coasts, and for those in the Marathon, particularly around the likes of Canary Wharf. For the Midlands, southwest England and Wales, a bit more cloud than we had through yesterday, certainly to begin with across parts of the Midlands and across much of Wales too. But sunny spells still possible here and there, best of which will be across the southwest and should stay dry. For Northern England, a different sort of day today, a lot more cloud generally speaking, especially across the northwest compared with yesterday. Northumberland, County Durham, parts of Cumbria and North Lancashire, as well as the Isle of Man. We could see some light rain or drizzle at times, particularly first thing this morning and then later into the afternoon. For Northern Ireland, we get off to another blue sky day, lots of sunshine around to begin with, a bit of a chilly start, touch of frost in one or two areas, a little bit of cloud will build up, but very pleasant in the sunshine. Scotland, any sunshine really limited to some western areas, cloudy elsewhere, rain in the east and the south, and temps today 8 on the east coast up to 18 in western Northern Ireland.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt. Time now for a look at the papers. And the Sunday Telegraph leads on calls for the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley. One of his officers accused a man of being openly Jewish during the pro-Palestinian protest. The Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, is quoted acknowledging that the police have a hugely difficult job, but he suggests the Met has been disrespecting Jews. In a separate article in the Telegraph, the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, argues that Sir Mark must go. She claims there is too much fear and even more favouritism in the way that police's pro-Palestinian protests. Writing in the Sunday Times, the man who was warned he could be arrested, Gideon Falted, says Sir Mark has to go because he's lost the control of the streets. Mr. Falter states that it's not just that central London is a no-go zone for Jews, but a police-enforced Jew-free zone. According to The Observer, Labour is launching a new campaign to win over to supporting pensioners ahead of the local elections in India next month. The paper says the party has detected alarm among older people about the impact a Conservative tax-cutting pledge could have on pensions and the NHS. Seeding Labour figures are said to believe that Chancellor Jeremy Hunt made a huge blunder when he said his party wanted to abolish national insurance contributions. Labour's leader Sir Keir Starmer has written an article in the Telegraph saying that he's proud to be English and that his party will celebrate St George's Day on Tuesday with enthusiasm. The paper suggests the article is a bold attempt to outmaneuver the Conservatives on the issue of national identity. It's also described as a slapdown to those in his own party who criticised Labour's use of patriotic symbols in its campaigning. Writing in the Sunday Express, the Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride and the Health Secretary Victoria Atkins defend the government's plan to tackle what they call the sick note culture. They say it's unacceptable that huge numbers of people are repeatedly being signed off work and not given the opportunity to discuss what adjustments could be put in place to help them carry on in their job. Separately, the Express says the Home Office is preparing a list of 200 asylum seekers who will be on the first deportation flight to Rwanda. The paper says more than 24,000 people have been told they are being considered for removal. Both the Sunday People and Sunday Mirror say climate change activists from the group Just Stop Oil are plotting to cause misery for thousands of holidaymakers this summer. According to the report, they're preparing to storm airports across the UK and Europe and glue themselves to runways and clamber onto jets. The Mirror says an undercover reporter heard about the plans at a meeting attended by hardcore activists. And the Mail on Sunday says the King is planning to attend Royal Ascot in June, despite his cancer treatment. The paper says he's told reporters that he wants to honour his late mother, who is 21 Ascot during her 70-year reign. The Mail says he will also attend Trooping the Colour. Sport now, and the Coventry City manager, Mark Robbins, has said Manchester United are the favourites to win when the two sides face each other in the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley this afternoon, but he said his players would embrace the challenge. In the first semi-final yesterday, Manchester City beat Chelsea with a run of all the action has been found.
Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola was full of praise for the way his team approached their FA Cup semi-final at Wembley Stadium. Bernardo Silva scored on 84 minutes in a 1-0 victory over Chelsea. This afternoon, Manchester United played the Championship side Coventry in the second semi-final. Celtic are through to the Scottish Cup final again. They drew 3-3 with Aberdeen but took the penalty shootout 6-5. Rangers play Hearts in the second Scottish Cup semi-final today. Now Arsenal went back to the top of the Premier League table again. It was a hard-fought Martin Odegaard. Liverpool can join them level on points this afternoon with a victory at Fulham. Jurgen Klopp's side still have an inferior goal difference. Burnley are only 3 points from safety after a 4-1 success at Sheffield United. Luton remain in the drop zone, beaten 5-1 by Brentford. A goal from Erin Cuthbert saw Chelsea win 1-0 away at the holders Barcelona in the first leg of their Women's Champions League semi-final. It was Barcelona's first defeat as City edged closer to the drop after losing 1-0 to Liverpool, who went fourth. Manchester City's women will go top today if they don't lose to West Ham. The Rugby Union Women's Six Nations Championship saw England make it 4 successive bonus point wins with an emphatic 88-10 victory over Ireland. Scotland went third in the table. They beat Italy 17-10 away. Max Verstappen will be on pole position for this morning's Chinese Formula 1 Grand Prix. The defending champion Luca Brissell lost by 10 frames to 9 to David Gilbert in making a first-round exit at the World Snooker in Sheffield.
Andy Barrow with this morning's sport. Finally, a glance back at some of the stories that were making news on this date in the past. A year ago, Dominic Raab resigned as Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary after an investigation into his conduct found that he'd acted in a way that was intimidating and persistently aggressive while he was the Foreign Secretary. He said his case would have a chilling effect on those driving change in the government. In 2019, more than 250 people were killed in a series of suicide bombings in churches, hotels, and other locations in Sri Lanka on Easter Sunday. The Islamic State group said it carried out the attacks. Robert Tyler, who lives in Sri Lanka, said guests at one of the hotels in the capital, Colombo, were targeted as they ate their breakfast.
All of the glass was blown out basically on 2 sides of the hotel. One side is all glass looking out to the swimming pool from the restaurant, and the other side looks out towards the seaside. Basically all the glass was out, and a bit of furniture and stuff on the roads, and that is the main breakfast room.
The £1 coin replaced paper notes in Wales in 1983. 49 years ago, the president of South Vietnam, Nguyen Van Thieu, was forced to resign after his country was overrun by the Communist North. He accused the United States of failing to provide military aid. Brasilia became the new capital of Brazil instead of Rio de Janeiro in 1960. In 1955, national newspapers in the UK were published for the first time in nearly a month following the strike by maintenance workers in Fleet Street. They walked out in dispute about pay. Russian troops entered the outskirts of Berlin on this date in 1945, marking the beginning of the savage battle for control of the city and final defeat of the Nazis. In 1934, the Daily Mail published probably the most famous picture of the Loch Ness Monster. It showed the long neck of Nessie emerging from water. The picture sparked an international sensation, but was revealed to be a hoax in the 1990s. And Henry VIII ascended the throne of England on this date in 1509, after the death of his father, Henry II. And that concludes today's news video. This is BBC Radio 4. Now, this week's Bells on Sunday comes from the village of St. Peter's, Lodsworth in West Sussex. In the Middle Ages, this spring near the 12th century church was a place of pilgrimage for the sick. The 13th century church tower holds 6 bells with a tenor of 6.5 weight and tuned to B. We hear the now in double Oxford organ. Those were the bells of St. Peter's, Lodsworth in West Sussex. Now, ready for it's time for In Touch with Peter Wright.
Tonight, it's something of an audio description special. Later on, we're going to be looking at the theatre company, which has given audio description a central role in one of its productions.
On scooters and bicycles with shining headlights. Oh, I know this lot. It's those pesky mechanicals again. Flute the bellows mender is on rather a large bicycle with enormous headlights. Do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
But first, while the use of AD commentary to support visual content can now be found widely all over the place, in museums, stately homes, art exhibitions, cinemas of course, one of its major roles has been to help visually impaired people follow what's happening on the telly. There's no doubt that for many people it's considerably enhanced the ability to enjoy TV programmes. But we also know from your comments to us that it's not always implemented as well as it could be by the major channels. We get complaints, for instance, about erratic use on popular series, AD appearing either late or disappearing altogether in the middle. And of course then there's the issue of how much content is actually audio described. Well, Ofcom, the communications regulator, has just produced the latest of its guidance to TV and streaming providers about what they should be doing. I'm joined by Helen Shaw of Ofcom's Content Policy Team. First of all, Helen, before we talk about what the new report actually says in your recommendations, can you just clarify Ofcom's role and powers as a regulator? What can you do and what can't you do?
We're responsible for enforcing the legal requirements on broadcasters to provide audio description. The target for broadcasters is to audio describe 10% of their programmes. In practice, many broadcasters do go beyond the 10%, and there aren't yet legal requirements for video on demand providers, so providers like ITVX or Now or Amazon Prime Video, but there is a bill going through Parliament at the moment called the Media Bill that is going to introduce similar requirements for on-demand services. These best practice guidelines that we've published today, they are more focused on how broadcasters make sure their access services are high quality and easy to use.
Okay, we'll come back to the media bill that's going through, but on the issue of the recommendations, I mean, what are your main recommendations now?
So we've made 3 main changes to our guidelines. Firstly, we've expanded them to cover on-demand accessibility and to include new advice for on-demand providers on things like offering customization options where possible, which could be increasing the size of subtitles for people that have sight loss or hearing loss. And we've also introduced new guidance on making audio description easier to find on on-demand services, as we know from our research that can be difficult. And then secondly, we now want providers to think about accessibility right from the start of making programmes, and that could include integrating descriptions of information into programmes that don't have audio description, so programmes like quiz shows.
What about the issue of what proportion of programmes are audio described in the first place? I mean, you've mentioned the 10% figure. A lot of visually impaired people think that that's, woefully low.
So the 10% target for broadcast television is set out in legislation, so ultimately it's a matter for government, but we do absolutely encourage broadcasters to see that as a bare minimum requirement and go beyond it wherever possible. In practice, many broadcasters are exceeding that target, so the BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and Sky have all voluntarily committed to audio describe at least 20% of their programmes. In practice, many broadcasters go even beyond that, so Channel 4 now audio describes over 50% of its programmes on its main channel.
So, I mean, is there any chance of getting more equity? People will ask the question, well, if Channel 4 could do 50%, why can't the BBC, why can't Sky?
We do encourage broadcasters to progressively increase the accessibility of their services. but we do understand that, you know, it does take time and it's not always straightforward. But, you know, I do hope that when the media bill comes into place, then, you know, your listeners will notice a difference in the accessibility of on-demand services.
Just because you raise the media bill, which is currently being debated in Parliament, what effect do you think that will have when it becomes law? Because I've looked at a number of the recommendations that it made. One thing that immediately strikes you that quite a lot of them are going to take quite a long time to come into effect, you know, 2 years, 3 years in some cases.
Yes, so I think the targets do sort of ramp up over a couple of years. You're right, to give providers enough time to get their provision up to scratch. But what I would say is that providers are aware of these rules coming in, and so they are already starting to prepare for that. But what I would hope your listeners would notice is a more consistent experience in accessibility. So at the moment, you know, audiences can find a programme might be accessible on a website, but not on, you know, a mobile app. But the media bill should hopefully mean that programmes are audio described across the different platforms and devices that on-demand programmes are available on.
Just finally, Helen, what happens now? I mean, how do you think the TV and streaming platforms will respond to your guidance?
I think they will take our guidance seriously. One thing that we are also setting up today is a new ongoing working group where we want to bring together on-demand providers, broadcasters and charities like the RNIB, so that charities and audiences can feed back on how they think the new guidelines are working and where they still want things to be improved. So these guidelines are really the start of ongoing conversations about how to continue to improve accessibility.
Helen Shaw, thank you very much indeed. Well, we stay with AD, but move to blind and partially sighted theatre goers, who often complain that they're effectively excluded from productions they like to go to because if audio description is provided at all, it's just for 1 or 2 shows in the run, and even then at inconvenient times. But could all that be about to change? Well, the Royal Shakespeare Theatre's production of A Midsummer Night's Dream might give us a glimpse into the future. In this production, every performance included what's being called creative audio descriptions. And it's not just greater availability which sets it apart, as our reporter Fern Lulham found out.
Well, we've arrived at the Royal Shakespeare Company. I've been reliably informed that there are lots of school kids in tonight, so hope everyone behaves themselves. Anything could happen.
One thing I knew for sure would be happening was that this production of A Midsummer Night's Dream offered creative audio description. I wanted to know what that entailed, so I tracked down the creative program developer for access and inclusion at the company, Jessica Hampton.
Nuggets of the script that have been changed on stage to kind of allow for audio integration. Shakespeare's plays already have a lot of audio description in a way in the script. You know, I bite my thumb at you, and you know, when someone draws a sword, it's always mentioned that someone's drawing a sword.
So even in William Shakespeare's day, he was already considering us.
he always writes the stage directions into the script most of the time. Yeah.
And I've heard that there's also soundscapes as part of the audio description.
Every time you hear the fairies, they have a wonderful soundscape going on, so you begin to recognise those kind of things as you go along. And we've also got creative audio notes, which are normally read by the audio describer, but this time they are read by members of the company, so they're describing themselves and what their character looks like.
Well, if it was down to the actors to deliver the audio description, I thought I'd better speak to one of them about it. And luckily, I had time, just before the show was about to begin.
My name is Esme Hoff, and I play Cobweb the Fairy. It helps build more of a character. I've almost got more of an idea of what Cobweb is like and what her opinions are, because I've been thinking about, you know, what she maybe thinks about the mechanicals and the lovers. It makes shows feel quicker and more vibrant because you feel like you're in, and you kind of get this rare opportunity to feel like you're a part of a scene that you're not in.
obviously you're talking from Cobweb's perspective. Are you sort of commenting on the action as she would see it? How does that work?
You really can pepper it with character opinions and character choices, particularly Cobweb Lights and Mechanical's absolutely ridiculous, which is really nice to weave into the description. And as you get more comfortable with it, you can add jokes in. We're deep in the forest now, where my mistress Titania sleeps on her bower. But who comes here? On scooters and bicycles with shining headlights. Oh, I know this. And it's those pesky mechanicals again. Flute the bellows mender is on rather a large bicycle with enormous headlights. Do you think maybe he's taking or something? There's little bits in the show that I change every night, and it's really lovely because it feels like I kind of have this little conspiratorial conversation with a group of people that not everybody gets. Little details like at one point one of the mechanicals eats a biscuit. And if you listen to the audio description, you know it's a pink wafer. It's not just any biscuit. Or there's just little choices that some actors make on some evenings, and if you see it happen in the booth, you can add it in because you know it's there. It's exciting, and it's not a box to be ticked or, you know, something to think about because we should.
Right, we've just found our seats. I have got my audio description headset up and ready. I'm looking forward to seeing if it's an enhanced experience.
Together we can write an audio description that is in character, in fitting with the tone and the world of the show. Audio description then isn't just about providing access, it's about making sure that it's providing the best possible experience to blind audiences.
Meet Ben Wilson, a blind performer and director of the creative audio description for this and many other productions.
I worked with a great experienced sighted audio describer and with the cast, and as a little team, as a unit, we created the audio description. You know, the opening scene of the show is described by Quince, one of the great iconic characters of Midsummer Night's Dream.
The stage is vast, bare and charcoal grey, but hundreds of orbs hang from the sky. They are alive with light and colour. At the moment, they are high above you, but once we enter the forest, they will float down to create the forest canopy and an eerie dreamscape. And that's just the start of the magic and mischief.
And suddenly, you have all the people around you not wearing the audio description headset, looking at you jealously and going, what am I missing out? Often, as the other way around. Often, as the blind person, I'm the one who's missing out on the fun. I've been doing this for a number of years now at various things across the country. The ironic thing about audio description is that you can't see it. It's invisible. If you're not the one wearing the headset, you probably don't know it's happening. And so it makes it easy to ignore. It makes it easy for directors, writers, not happening. It feels quite insulting. I know from working in the theatre industry how much time and effort and work goes into every detail of the show. The theatre director would never say to their lighting designer, oh, do whatever you like, I don't care. They'd never say to their actors, oh, I don't care how you perform that scene, do however you like. But that's what happens with audio description. And so to work on a piece of theatre where you're seeing these brilliantly talented people pouring their heart and soul and really working their socks off, it's just a wonderful feeling.
And here's my verdict.
Not only was it accessible, but it was also very down to earth. So it was like having a friend next to you telling you what was going on. I also love this idea of accessibility being exciting and like a bonus for everyone. And if that could be adopted in more areas of life, I just think we'd be onto a winner.
Fern Mullen reporting there, and of course Fern is something of an audio describer herself. And that's it for today. We'd like your reactions to this wherever audio description is used. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338, and you can go to our website bbc.co.uk/in-touch. From me, Peter White, and producer Beth Hemmings, goodbye.
Phone number again to ask a question or to leave a comment for In Touch, it's 0161 836 1338. Here's the email address, intouch@bbc.co.uk.
Banks in meltdown, no way to buy anything, economy literally ground to a halt.
There isn't a single big corporation that can pay the staff.
Hang on, is that true, Tim? We're not being paid for this? Probably not. Oh.
Satirical drama on BBC Radio 4.
Good news, yes. This catastrophe, I know what it is.
With Robert Bathurst, Gisette Simon and Charlotte Ritchie. Nobody in the world can access their money. Brilliant. Can you imagine if it's just us, just the UK?
Scary.
Right. Money Gone on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds.
Jeremy? Good luck, everyone.
Jeremy, are you there? Starts on Friday afternoon at 2:15.
Hello?
BBC News at 6 o'clock on Sunday the 21st of April. This is Vigialis. Good morning. Weapons and ammunition from the latest tranche of US support for Ukraine could arrive in the country in the next week, after political deadlock in Washington was broken last night. The House of Representatives approved a $60 billion aid package when Democrats were joined by some Republicans to outvote the hard right who wanted the money to be diverted to the southern border of the US. President Biden has said the decision demonstrated America's global leadership and urged the Senate to approve the bill quickly. Ukraine welcomed the outcome. Our correspondent James Waterhouse reports from Kyiv.
President Zelensky has said Ukraine will lose the war without American help. That's been reinforced over the past 6 months by Russia taking more territory and other Western allies struggling to fill the gap left by Washington. Now, Ukraine is feeling the weight of American support once more, with its leader saying the package, containing much-needed ammunition and air defences, will help stop the war from expanding. This isn't the silver bullet which will help Ukraine win the war, but it extends its window to fight and keeps the negotiating table at bay. Now the focus shifts from whether to when this lethal aid will arrive, with reports suggesting some of it could be used within days.
At the same time as the Ukraine vote, members of the House overwhelmingly approved a new package of military support for Israel. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the bill would defend Western civilization, but a spokesman for the Palestinian president called the move an act of aggression that would cause thousands more casualties in Gaza. The campaign against anti-Semitism is calling for the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley to resign over the force's handling of pro-Palestinian protests in London. Yesterday, the Met apologized after an officer called the campaign's chief executive, Gideon Falter, openly Jewish and suggested his presence at a demonstration last week was provocative. He says he was treated like a criminal for being Jewish. A former superintendent in the force, Dal Barbo, says officers are in a very difficult position.
If the police didn't act, if that person got injured and the police didn't act, then the police would be criticised in the same way that they're being criticised for intervening. They have apologised because the words used by a police officer, openly Jewish, was not the right term.
One naval crew member has died and 7 others are missing after 2 Japanese helicopters crashed during an exercise off Japan's southern coast. The aircraft were involved in anti-submarine training and the defense minister said they were likely to have collided. The 2 flight recorders have been recovered. People in Ecuador will vote today on enhanced security measures in response to escalating violence and soaring murder rates blamed on drug cartels and trafficking gangs. The military could be allowed to patrol these streets routinely and prison sentences may be increased. Thousands of people are expected to attend a vigil this morning in the Australian city of Sydney to remember those who died in last week's stabbing. Joel Cauchi killed 6 people and wounded 12 others at a shopping mall in Bondi Junction. He was shot dead by a police officer. Our Sydney correspondent Katie Watson reports from Bondi.
The Westfield shopping centre has now reopened, but there are plenty of reminders of what happened last week. Signs with black ribbons acknowledging those who died here, therapy dogs on hand to help people process the attack, and some shops remain shut. Outside, a marquee has been put up to protect the ever-growing mountain of flowers that have been left here. The attack has shocked Australia, a country little used to violent crime. The vigil's been planned to enable the community to stand together.
Coventry City are aiming to reach their first FA Cup final since 1987 this afternoon. The West Midlanders, currently 8th in the second tier, are managed by the former Manchester United striker Mark Robins, whose goal in the competition in 1990 is credited by many as saving Sir Alex Ferguson's job at Old Trafford. A win for United would secure a rerun of last year's final, a derby with Manchester City. BBC News.
Many thanks, Vigianis.